All right, Ryuji, thank you so much, mate, for joining the show today. Hey, how you been?
Nige, my pleasure to be on the show. I've been great. And look, thanks for reaching out. This should be fun.
Yeah, no worries at all. I had a few people asking about creative, and in my last podcast, for the audience, if they haven't seen that podcast, it's the 10 top strategies for Black Friday. What one of the things I was looking at was the execution and creative and UX and design. And I knew you were coming on the show because we'd already had a chat. So maybe if we could start with your background, mate, what you've been up to and your career. And
Thanks, Nige. So look, my name is Ryuji Uematsu. I'm the managing director of Rysen. Rysen is a specialist UX UI agency. We've obviously had the pleasure of working with you, Nige, at many of your past places.
Yep.
Yeah, and look, we've been around for 19 years, so we've been doing this for a long, long time. We, I guess, started the business myself and Sally, my business partner, back in 2005.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's still going.
I've seen some of the work you guys have been putting out. It's just amazing. So, in terms of your background, so you came from Japan at the age of 4. You were telling me.
Yes. So I guess my dad was a bit of a wanderer. So back in the day, he traveled the world, all over Europe, etc., America, and he fell in love with Australia. And so he wanted to, bring his family and raise them in Australia. So when I was 4, our immediate family emigrated from Japan to Sydney. And then I guess, since then we've sort of, grown and lived here. So my dad was a chef. He was, I guess, quite entrepreneurial, and he's run a lot of restaurants in Sydney. So some of the Japanese restaurants. And then, look, my mum's also from, an entrepreneurial background. She runs her own real estate agency. Her parents ran their own sweets, factory and business in Japan. But
awesome.
Look, came over. Did my growing up in sort of Neutral Bay, Mossman. And then look, ended up going to high school, North Sydney Boys. And at the time, look, I've got an interesting story. At the time, I think it was in year 6, they started to do sort of tests for every student in year 6 to sort of get them into different schools. And so we did our test one day, and look, I was one of the nerdy kids, so I thought I did well. But funnily, about 2 or 3 days later, somebody from the Department of Education came back to our school, came to our class, knocked on the door, pointed to me and said, "Excuse me, sir, we need you to do the test again." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" And so I did the test again. It was the exact same test. And, the first time I did it, I thought I did well. But the second time, obviously, I could pick up on maybe some mistakes that I've made. So I did it again, submitted it. And they came back and said they lost my initial or original test. And that's why they got me to do it again. And I think I did got a really great score.
And that resulted in you being the smartest year 6 student in New South Wales, was it?
Yeah, something like that. They said my test score was off the Richter scale. So yes,
you'll be Mensa. You'll be sitting next to Stephen Hawking and then talking about the theory of everything with Michio Kaku.
yes, something like that. But that's I guess the benefit of doing the test twice.
Tell us maybe a bit more about your move into sort of this creative side of your CV.
At high school, a few friends and I were really interested in, designing products, so product design, your traditional industrial design. And I actually really wanted to sort of design cars, and in particular, sort of Formula One cars. And so I looked at, what sort of, courses are out there that it'll, maybe train you to become a, car designer. And that
would be a cool job, designing cars.
It'd be amazing. So there was a course called Industrial Design. But straight away, one of the things that you learn when you, do an industrial design course is that, look, there's very few opportunities, especially in Australia, for product design, especially back then. And this is mid to late 90s. And so I guess throughout that course, what I discovered was, enjoying that creative process, the creative side of things. So helping to not just design products, but also to present products, when it comes time for, presenting your products, end of year sort of shows, etc. And we fell
Right.
in love, or a bunch of us at uni fell in love with, sort of the presentation side, delivering awesome, back then it was, what we would call multimedia presentations.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's kind of, how we, or I guess, sort of progressed away from your traditional product design and more
Mm-hmm.
into sort of graphic design, and I guess what we would call now UX and UI.
Mm. Amazing. It's a super interesting field. And would you recommend that anybody getting into the field, you got any tips for them
Look, yeah, you're spot on, Nige. It's there's so much interest in this space, and the
yeah.
beauty is, I think that the barrier of entry has sort of lowered. It's a lot easier to become a designer. It's a lot easier to learn the process, and especially with the changes in AI. This space is going to, I think, change dramatically. I think from there on, you can sort of build a strong skill set, and you can do well. It's less about the technical ability of can I use this application or that.
Mm.
It's very much about understanding the customer, and trying to
And their
work back from
audience.
there.
Yeah.
What would
Yeah.
be an awesome experience, or what sort of products or services might they be interested in.
You mentioned some work you did for Toyota, I think, in the past, and that was on, I think, your brief. I remember when you and I spoke first up, and there was some work I think you did for Hyundai as well.
Yeah, so there was a
Yeah.
bunch. So
Yeah.
I guess at uni, when we realized that there are no job opportunities as industrial designers,
Mm.
a bunch of us, I think 10 or 12 of us, got together and I guess formed a student company, basically
Okay.
a company whilst we were at uni to gain some experience.
Oh, yeah.
And so through that, we were able to do some work for, some of our friends, some of the local businesses.
Yep.
There was a famous restaurant called East Ocean Chinese Restaurant in Chinatown that we did some work for. But we
Yeah.
were also lucky enough to do some product design and graphic design work for Optus. So yeah, early on, we tried to gain some experience, and tried to, I guess, see what other opportunities were out there outside of your traditional industrial design, product design.
Mm.
And then sort of after uni, that the student company gave us some great experience. It allowed a bunch of us to get into the types of roles we were interested in, and back then it was more, I guess, sort of graphic design, visual design. And
Mm-hmm.
I was lucky enough to go to a company called Spike. Spike was one of the first .com darlings. It was the first,
Okay.
I guess, web agency in the world to list on the stock exchange.
No,
So
really?
yeah,
No,
so
I've
this
never
was a
heard,
little
never
bit
heard of it. Yeah.
little bit
It's a lot.
before the .com bubble.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they
Right.
were known for throwing big parties. They had offices in LA,
Everybody
Tokyo,
loves a big
Hong
party.
Kong. Yeah, and it was back in the day when the internet was still quite young,
Mm-hmm.
and companies were only starting to get a feel of what could or couldn't be done. And so back then,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, we had some great clients, Toyota, both here and globally. We had other clients like Telstra, Mars, the confectionery business,
Yep.
NEC, Panasonic. Yeah, so we were able to, back in those days, work on, I guess, very basic, but at the time quite innovative websites. And
Mm.
we're talking like little microsites. I remember doing a 5-page website for Toyota. And we would charge them literally $1 million for 5 hard-coded web pages. Um, and in addition,
And I know you're not joking.
yeah, and then in addition, the company would charge $100,000 per month maintenance to maintain, 5 web
Wow.
pages. Yeah, it was crazy. It was,
Yeah. Yep.
I guess everyone was still trying to understand what the web could and couldn't do. And a lot
Yes.
of the,
Yes.
the bigger companies back then jumped on just to try some things, put things out there to
The
see
big
what
marketing
worked.
budgets. Yeah.
Exactly,
Yeah.
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 And look, to be honest, back then there were very little. Well, there was next to no e-commerce, so it was more
Mm.
the corporates and the big brands that were jumping on first, just to build, their online presence, etc.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing, isn't it, how far things have come? But I suppose it's like anything, after a while, it becomes cheaper. Any new technologies or any leap step in technologies are usually for the elite, as they say, or
Yeah.
the bigger businesses that can afford to dabble in it. and have the bigger budgets, and then it becomes more accessible because
That's right.
there's more skills, there's more resources available. There's it's matured a little bit. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Wow, $1 million for a 5-page website. One of the things we found was a lot of these agencies that were very not so much hard to get hold of, but they just weren't very personable. It was all kind of all smoke and mirrors. Let's just say it was a lot of, shiny silver stuff going on. And they didn't seem, none of it really seemed real. We were ringing around and we were trying to get quotes. And I remember this is to do the rebranding for Big Brown Box at the time. And John Hughes, who I just actually had just on the podcast, had a retail session with Steve Colmar from Retail Oasis. We were struggling to find agencies that were approachable, who really had the right ethos. And when we met you guys, we were like, this is a real relief. It was a breath of fresh air that we could just come in and sit down and just have a conversation with you, as just really frank discussions about what we could do, how we would do it, how long it would take, how much it would cost. Maybe give us an understanding of how over the years that has worked really well for you as an agency.
Thank you for your kind words. Very grateful. Look, I guess Sally, my business partner, and I started Rysen more out of passion and love of design. It was passion over profit, and we knew that if we did things well, the money would follow, and that's fine. But we weren't, I guess, focused on money or profit. It was more about how do we help our customers with awesome designs, with awesome experiences, and I guess back to your point, it was all about just caring. We understand that by helping you guys, it'll also help us grow as an agency. And look, we've sort of, I guess, held on to that ethos about basically trying to help others through the skill sets that we have, which is essentially design, going from chaos to clarity, and what that process looks like.
Yeah, no, that's just so true. And when you say that, I have these thoughts of back in 2005. Obviously, you started this, and you'd already done sort of this work with Toyota, and you're starting to get into the web already, and it's sort of tending to go that way. But I remember experiencing things with senior executives in certain organizations, and they'll say things. Oh, can we have like this flashing over here, and then can we have like a scrolling bar come across the screen and say click here, and then can we have so that taking that chaos and making clarity. And I've said this a few times in my podcast, is taking it's easy to make things complicated, but it's hard to make them simple and keep that relevance to the audience, and I think and I think that's where the experience, and you can't replace that. You get that through this, I call it a law of process, but it's that an agency or the people within the organization go through in order to understand what the client actually wants, because they might want something, scrolling and flashy, but it'll end up looking like Ling Ling cars. Have you seen Ling Ling cars?
I have.
Yeah. Oh, for the audience out there, I'll put visit the show notes. But without digressing too much right now, I'll just quickly share my screen for those watching the podcast. But this is Ling Ling cars. So I liken this to every time somebody says, "Oh, we want the CFO to join a meeting about the creative for the website," I say no. The reason being, and I don't mean to be rude, but just visit Ling Ling Cars. And then I always get an email back or a phone call back saying, okay, yeah, we understand. No, it's all good. He just wants such and such and such. And I'm like, all right, cool. But I mean, this guy's taken what is essentially taking the Mickey out of what was almost the late 90s, early 2000s ideas of what a website should look like. And he's made an exceptional kind of business out of it.
Interestingly, Nigel, when was it? Maybe sort of around the 2010. We had a customer of ours come to us with a brief like that. They actually wanted that busy, fire sale.
Yep.
cheap, get a deal kind of look and feel.
Yep.
And this was a little bit before, JB Hi-Fi was,
Yes.
getting big.
Yep.
And we found it fascinating because the
Mm.
client, he'd traveled the world, and he'd gone to Asia and in particular in Japan where they have brochures like that. That's sort of stock
Yeah.
standard. And he
Yeah. Yeah.
wanted to
Yeah.
bring that sort of,
Yeah.
I guess that cheapness, get a bargain,
Yeah.
here in Australia, and we did that for a while. We had those sort of busy catalogs. Their website was also sort of a little bit like that, busy sale.
Mm.
Yeah, and
Mm.
then unfortunately, I think that business, they had maybe 5 or 6 retail stores around Australia, but eventually ended up sort of closing before the juggernauts like JB Hi-Fi
Mm.
came around.
Yeah, I mean, it works for some brands. It works, as you say, with JB Hi-Fi. I mean, do you think JB Hi-Fi doesn't have multi-million-dollar budgets to produce the nicest, slickest looking creative in the world? Of course they do, but they don't, because it's core to their brand. It's core
Yeah.
to their ethos. The whole slashing prices, and like, it's clear that you had a why when you started the business. You wanted to help people, right? And a lot of the times I talk to businesses out there, and I say to them, well, when they want a new website, I say, well, what is it that you want the customers to understand about you? What do you want them to, what is your why? Like, why are you in business? Are you in business just to make money? And because a website, you've only got a few seconds to make an impression, and being able to convey who you are, why you're in business, all of those really important the DNA of your brand comes through in creative. There's no actual other interface. The website isn't, in fact, just a creative interface to you, and so you as the business owner, and what your offering is in the marketplace, and the customers you're trying to talk to in your audience. At the same time, they're much better off, I feel, investing the money in the right places, investing in paying an agency like yourselves to generate the look and feel to the brand, a creative guideline, and then taking that as a blueprint, I guess is what I'm trying to say, rather than trying to make it up as they go and pay some overseas. Because I'm finding there's a lot of small businesses in Sydney, especially, that have somehow gotten caught up in these overseas businesses that are doing, like, and I look at their websites and their SEO, and they say, oh, no one's clicking on my website. And I look at it, and it's just, and I feel sorry for some of these businesses, because they've paid tens of thousands of dollars for what is essentially just rubbish. And, I don't have the heart to tell them that what they've got is, if I was to look at it, I'd probably throw it in the bin, and I know it sounds harsh, but it's the truth. And if they had have just thought, well, I should get a professional agency like Rysen or something like that to do that creative for them, as I said, they would have that blueprint. Then they can use that for everything. If they wanted to create merchandise, if they wanted to create a website, brochures, flyers, if they want to get the secretary, they've got a nice letterhead that they can use. These things, I think, are fundamental for businesses. And anyway, I'll move on. But I'm quite passionate about it at the moment, because I've been looking at a lot of people have been reaching out as I've been doing these podcasts, and I've been looking at their websites for them. And it's quite sad, actually, because I feel like they've been ripped off, and I'm trying to help as we go. So
Yeah, totally. I mean, if I can just add to that quickly, Nige,
yeah,
yeah,
sure.
you're spot on. The whole sort of, the why is such a big piece. We've worked with a lot of clients, a lot of retailers, and we found that the people that excel, that do really well, are the people that know their why, and there's a purpose to their business or their agency. And if you don't have that why, clients, customers will see through that,
Yeah,
and the
100%.
businesses will fail, or they'll churn through clients or staff. So yeah, to your point, I think understanding and having that why is critical, and we've seen that time and time again. All the best retailers that we've worked with know their why, know their purpose, and then they build sort of off of that.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, thanks, Ryuji. Thanks for that. I'll see if I can bring up some examples of some of the work you've done as well. But I really wanted to sort of convey what I think is the absolute, the best possible outcome for a business in terms of productivity when you're working really quickly online, and everybody says, "Oh, online moves so quickly." It does, and if your business, if you can't scale your business when you do start to grow, and all the businesses that I've been involved in have grown very, very quickly. And we were fortunate enough to be able to, we had a small team in both instances, but we were fortunate enough to be able to have a agency like you guys, like Rysen, that could almost feel like an extension of our business. So I just wanted to make a point that when we create these briefs, when we send them to you and they come back, the first few times there might be a bit of back and forth. But then after a while, it was almost like you just kind of understood what we want. And maybe you could talk a bit about that. There's sort of this initial pain that people feel like, oh, if I have to change agencies, well, then I'm going to have to go through a whole relearning process. They're going to have to understand what I want. But I can speak for this, how quickly you guys picked up on what we wanted. Tell us a little bit more about that. Like, I know these things just don't happen. How do you do it? Like, I'm just really curious.
Yeah. So Nige, thank you. Look, firstly, a lot of it has to do with our clients. It's the brief. It's what you guys initially come to us with. And in my time, in this industry, Nige, there are very few people that know, the technology, the customers, the requirements like you do. So first and foremost, Nige, you're one of the best in the industry. And, I've
Thanks,
been in
mate.
the industry for 20 plus years. You are like literally maybe one or two people that I know that just, yeah, know everything, finger on the pulse. And as a result of that, you come to us with a great brief. And again, it goes back to that whole concept of empathy. So empathizing with you guys as a business, but then we act, I guess, on behalf of you to understand who your audience is, who your target audience or target markets are. And we try and empathize with, with that group or those audience groups. So it really comes back to, trying to understand, look, what is the problem here, or what are the pain points, and what are the opportunities to improve that or to create a solution. So once we understand that, and there's obviously a lot of back and forth, we'll go back to you with questions, vice versa, but typically we will have some some meetings or some huddles internally to really get on the same page. And so that typically takes a little bit of time, but once we're on the same page, then we've got an awesome platform to build. And I think that's been the case. Yeah, and to scale. And that's been the case every time, Nige, on the projects that we've worked on.
Masters, you guys did work for Masters as well. Yeah, I know. The Master stuff originally was okay, but then after a while, it looked really, really good. And I was wondering, and I didn't know you guys were doing the Masters creative, to be honest. I mean, if that site had been going today, it would have absolutely killed Bunnings. I mean, like in terms of the online side of things, because it was so good. And I look at Bunnings now, and it just does my absolute head in, that website. The sites can always be improved, and my mother always said, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. So I'm not going to say too much, but because I shop at Bunnings, I love Bunnings. It's not like I don't love the place. I spend thousands there, but I have to drive to my store because I just can't use their website. It's just next to useless to me as a business. And half the time I actually want to shop, but I don't. Because it's just, I don't want to use the website and I don't have time to go there. So they're missing a share of wallet from me right now that they could have had. I could be getting stuff delivered today, and they're not, because their site, and it's inherently complicated. I totally get it. Like, hardware and their categories is probably some of the most complex when it comes to product information management, category management, attribute management, all that kind of stuff, taxonomies and all of that. It's really complicated. I totally get it. Mate, you got enough money, guys. Like, it's not like you don't have enough money to have the biggest team in Australia to fix that website. Like, please, can you just do it? And if you need my help, I'm happy to help. Nice segue there.
Yeah. Just
I can give you some tips.
Just on that, Nige, the Masters project, fascinating. And you're right. There's, I mean, Bunnings, runs and ons the market, and there's so much more.
Well, it's a monopoly now, isn't it? Pretty much. Yeah, it was a duopoly before, but yeah.
But yeah, look, back in the day when we were working on masters, and that was a joint venture between, two of the world's largest retailers, Woolworths and
Mm,
Lowe's from the States. And,
mm.
it was, I mean, we were lucky to be working, on the website at the time. But yeah, just to see, I guess, the interesting dynamics, and how the project was run, how it all came together. But you're right, online that master's website was doing really well. So the online business was doing well, and we all know what happened to the bricks and mortars business, and they closed it down. But I know, we did, I think, on a single day, we did. I think it was about $20 million in sales on one day.
No, I mean, the reason I ask you about that and how you can scale is because I often think how AI, is it going to be at some point that a customer writes a brief and you go over to some sort of AI prompt and you go, okay, this is the brief, and it spits out, what it thinks would be the idea for a color palette, for a design. I mean, I'm not a graphic designer, so I'm just picking buzzwords here, but like AI is going to, obviously, as you say, it's going to transform the graphic design industry. And a lot of my artwork I created for my business, I created using AI.
Wow.
And yeah, and what I did is I actually got drawings done, and then I uploaded them, and then I got AI to tweak them, and I used prompts to tweak it, and then eventually got what I wanted. But because I actually, for me, the brief was, of course, the podcast is sort of about AI as well in retail. That's why I did it, because I wanted it to show what you can actually do with AI. So the cover art you see for the podcast was created semi by a person who I have assignment to copyright of. And then from there, I then uploaded it and created it through AI, made some changes to it. And then that person then tweaked it again. And now that's what I've got. So do you think it's going to be this symbiotic relationship between creative people like yourself that have empathy for the customer? Because we know AI doesn't have empathy. It's not capable. It's not self-aware. Do you think it's going to be this symbiotic relationship between, amazing creative people like you and your agency and then AI?
Yeah, look, I think ultimately it is, and it's fascinating because this space is moving so quickly. AI will speed up the pace, so to bring sort of websites or the creative and get it done a lot quick. We're only scratching the surface. Even some basic things like a designer's pet hate is looking for stock imagery. Then
Yeah.
you'd think they would find it in a few minutes. 2 or 3 hours later, they're still scrolling
Yeah.
through.
And that's agency hours, all right? I mean, yeah.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
Whereas now with Mid-Journey, for example, you can prompt what you want and describe it, and then it will just pump out those things for you. And then you can either regenerate it, create variations, tweak the prompts, and it creates that custom visual or that custom graphic for you. And that's sort of AI 101. What's going to happen a year or 5 years down the track? I can't even imagine it. And like you said, even though AI doesn't maybe have empathy right now, I think in the near future it will. It will be doing a lot of this stuff for us. And so for the moment, I see AI as more of an extension of our thinking and our tools, and it'll help us do things faster, quicker, better. It hasn't quite replaced us or agencies just yet, but you never know. I think it has the capability to do that.
Yeah, I think so too. But I think it will never have the real empathy and and I think my gut feeling is that a lot of these industries that are going to have this symbiotic with relationship with AI are going to just readapt, and they're going to learn. I don't think it's going to result in people losing their jobs. The only one that I would say would possibly be creative writing. I think the pool is just going to get a lot smaller, and you're going to have just really talented people in a very small pool, and they'll just demand more money, I think. And there was an article just recently, I'll put it in the show notes, about plagiarism, how there was a research firm that looked at generative AI and looked at the large language models and a lot of the prompts, and it looked for plagiarism within that, and it found, I think it's very, very high percentage of my quote of it was plagiarized. And I think it was the same with creative as well, where sort of some creatives that had a thematic consistency in the creative design, in the prompts, actually took that from artworks from famous designers like Vincent van Gogh and and all of these, and some of the more recent artists that are very popular, it looked to try and mimic those different styles. And I think there's some cases going on where creative types are suing AI companies for plagiarism because it's copying their style, and which I think is completely fair. Because the human brain is the only thing right now that is capable of taking something as essentially a thought and making a vision out of it, a visual representation of what that is, and that visual representation is true to the person who has created it. So therefore, it belongs to them, right? And if someone comes along, whether it's an AI tool, I suppose is my point here, or a human, if they copy that, it is plagiarism. Anyway, it'd be interesting, and I'll see if I can dig up some details of that and put them in the show notes. Thanks, Ryuji, for that. Maybe we could talk a little bit about the projects. I know we mentioned a few already. We worked on Big Brown Box together, Radio Rentals, the Bing Lee redesign. It won an award. That Magento site was probably the best site. And in fact, I had people from Magento emailing me saying, who did the work on this? It's absolutely amazing from both a coding point of view and also to a creative point of view. So I broke up design, creative, UX, and then the coding between two agencies for the audience. So the brief for me was, I wanted, at the time, it was difficult for people who do programming to be creative. And it still is. Like, I often laugh because people say, oh, I've got a friend he's an IT guy. He does my website for me. But I need someone to look at it because I want something better. I'm like, yeah, I can see why, because he's used like Microsoft Paint to create. So that site was, getting back to that site, and I think I'll bring up your site actually.
On our site,
yeah.
So we've got the Bing Lee example. I think the Big Brown Box one is only showing the old site, but you're right. I think that project was really interesting, and again, it comes down to, I think, a lot of the work, Nige, that you did with your team and understanding, or changing the perception of who your audience is.
And I'm just on the website here, and I'm looking at your clients at the moment. I mean, you've got some impressive clients here: Hype DC, Bendon. I mean, this is really impressive. Fantastic Furniture, Radio Rentals, King Living, National Geographic. So for the audience out there, if you're thinking of redesigning your site, or you want creative work done, I highly recommend you jump on to, and I'll leave it in the show notes as well, to the Rysen website, and reach out to you and your team, Ryuji, to have a bit of a chat about what it is. And it could even start with something like an EDM design that they've got the website's okay, but their EDMs need to be fixed because that's their main, the main channel that they communicate with their audience, or their social side of things. They want to sort of revamp that a little bit.
And yeah, look, happy for anyone to contact me. And look, if we can't help you out as an agency, at least I can give you some advice or point you in the right direction. To your point, Nige, we're here to help people. If we can help them directly, great. If not, we've got, I guess, a lot of knowledge, insights that we can share, and we've also got partners that we can, guide them to.
Any others that we should mention? I mean, in terms of what you're working on, I mean, there's Dan Murphy's, Lounge Lovers, Wine Gardens.
To be honest, this website's a little bit old and needs some updating.
Well, it's like the mechanic's car that never starts. You know what I mean? He doesn't have time to fix it.
Yeah. But I mean, Nige, even if
Mortgage House.
If you want to click on the Bing Lee site, I think we've got a sort of a before and after that kind of showcases,
Oh, hang on 1 sec. Sorry, I'll go back. I'll look at the Masters one. I mean, Masters was such a beautiful site. Their stores were so good too. It's such a shame that brand went down. But I mean, look at that. That looks fantastic.
Part of our remit for this project was not just the UX and the design. We helped them put together a style guide so that, moving forward, they had something really solid from a digital and creative perspective that they could then share to their, partners, etc., to help, provide that content, whether it's blogs, imagery, etc.
Yeah, I mean, fantastic. I mean, if I look at the Bunnings side at the moment, it just looks boring. Like, it looks like just really boring. Right. And it's not inspiring at all. Like, well, we might move on to the next topics.
Look, Hype DC, they were a foundation client of Ryzen. So when we first started, they were our first client. I guess before we started Ryzen, they were using both myself and Sally as, I guess, freelance contract designers, helping them with, I think print ads on a old street magazine called 3D World. And they were new to
Nice.
the industry. They were, I think, only 3 stores. And yeah, just trying to get off the ground. And again, another awesome client to work with. They knew their why. They had a passion for what they were doing, and they would allow us to, I guess, do our thing. They weren't sort of micromanaging us. They would just know, and create that space for us to flourish. And yeah, and that allowed us to do a lot of amazing work for them, not just on their website, but a lot of their in-store branding. We even did again back in the day some custom published magazine all around their ethos of first. Their tagline was back then, research the globe so you can have it first. And so we created this,
Oh, that's awesome.
yeah,
I
this
love that.
magazine that was all about, I guess, more about their ethos and less about their products. Yeah, and we used to, just do a lot of work. So yeah, again, another awesome brand that we've had the pleasure of working with, from back in the day.
Yeah, and I mean it's super fast as well. I mean, if you for the audience here, I'm clicking on different sizes of shoes here, and it's just lightning fast. Like it's and it's what you want, really. You don't want to be sitting there waiting for pages to load. I think most sites now have pretty much caught up, but I like the fact that it's 4 across. The fact that you can see the sizes that are available really, really quickly. That's another really nice feature. I bought these actually. These from
nice.
these. Yeah. I've got these from the guys. But so you can see that for the audience. It's just I just clicked into a pair of Adidas Gazelles and bang, it was instant. Shows me all of the different payment methods, the sizes, different variations or variants of the different colors that are available. Scrolls really nice. That's really nice and smooth. Yeah, I mean, it's a great design. And this is, again, is you've got so many brands. It could look so messy, yet it's been able to keep its scale with the product range and not look over the top, or the volume isn't turned up too much in one particular area that sort of takes you away to, a different area, or it sort of or creates a distraction where you might walk or click away from the site and bounce. So I'm assuming these guys, their bounce rates are really quite low. I mean, they've got all the Instagram posts here as well, which is really, really nice. Yeah, it's a really nice site. I mean, again, that's a testament to a really, really good design work and having good content, really, isn't it? I mean, you can have a great design, but if your content is rubbish, then it's going to look terrible. So, and I find it's very hard to scale content nicely, even formatting your paragraphs correctly, using the right font size, styles, colors, making sure on mobile that it's really easy to read and things are immediately apparent when you're looking at them at a mobile. Still find a lot of sites not mobile first and digital natives, as they say. They don't really have a desktop. They don't have a laptop. They've just got their phones or an iPad. So if your site is not mobile first, you're doing a huge disservice to yourself and also to your customers, because they're the ones who are getting quite frustrated with viewing something that is not right for that particular viewport. So
yeah, spot on. And I think it goes back to just spending the time to look at each break point or the responsiveness and making sure at every size it makes sense and it works.
Yeah, 100%. No, that's a really good segue into part 2 of the show, which is really looking at the customer centricity, let's just call it.
So look, the first point around data. So it's literally the more data we have, the better the end results. So definitely, analytics, so GA data. But also we've found that a lot of our customers will have data in their, email or CRM, and also in store. So we try and pull that together to better understand, who I guess their current customers are, and potentially who they might want to target in addition to that. So that forms the
Yep.
basis of helping to create target audiences, and or to stem off that, helping to create personas. And the benefit of creating personas is that it helps us better empathize with a group.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want to just say, oh, we're targeting, women 24 to 34. Sorry, 24
Mm-hmm.
to 35.
Yep.
We'd rather say, look, we are going to target, a Jillian that lives in, so and so suburb, has
Yep.
a family. We sort of go beyond just demographics. We look at their psychographics and we start to try and paint
Okay.
a picture of the different audience groups, just
It
so
makes
that
sense.
it helps us better empathize with, that particular audience or that group. So
Mm-hmm.
look, typically from the data, we'll start to split out and create target audiences and personas. And then as part of our, I guess, customer-centric methodology, we will then start to try and better empathize with that audience group. And we'll run some exercises like empathy mapping, user journey mapping. So the empathy mapping part is to understand, who that person is first and
Yep.
foremost as a person.
Mm-hmm.
Before they're shopping for a product or before they're shopping for a service, what's going on in their lives? What are their pains, their
Yeah.
gains? What are they hearing? What are they seeing? Are they, I don't know, watching a particular show? What are they gossiping about with friends about? All that sort of thing. It just helps
Yeah,
us.
I can talk a bit to that, Ruji. Just sorry to interject there, but
No.
one thing that I know worked really well is when we sat down and we did this, and we overlaid what you said in relation to distractions and so on with the time on site. So when people were visiting, so what time of the day were people visiting, but also how long did they stay during that time? And we found from this journey mapping that we did with you guys, and by looking at the customer profile and then understanding, okay, when is she getting distracted? We actually found, and it makes perfect sense, but that's saying you don't know what you don't know until you actually look at it and do that very basic analysis. It's to say, okay, well, from 5 o'clock till 7 o'clock, we're finding that that the time on site is dropping, but the conversions are still quite high. But the time on site's dropping. Why is that? Oh, okay. Well, because it's dinner time, and everyone's getting dinner ready, and or they're cleaning up after dinner if they've had it early. Or so yeah. I mean, it's the simple things, and you realize, okay, well, maybe we should flight our budgeting slightly different for our Google ads, and at the time if you're spending $50,000 a day on Google ads, that makes a difference. Just that little tweak to potentially when you might want to save your money till the end of the night when they're back online on their iPads doing that tablet shopping. You might want to upweight the budget at that point, but you don't know that until you actually overlay what you said. When would she be distracted, for example? Is it in the morning when she's getting the kids ready for school? Is it during the drop-off time? Is she on a mobile? Is she now completing the checkout on a mobile? If the target audience is female, a sort of mum, female, living in the suburbs, everything has causation. You know what I'm saying? And I highly recommend that if you see that out there in retail land, and for the guys listening, that you do this work and you reach out to Ridge and have a look at how you can potentially understand your customers a little bit better to then work out, because the flow on effect isn't just to a creative brief, it's actually to marketing and how you spend your money to get the customers to the site and when you should best flight that.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And you're right there, Nige. When you go through the journey mapping or the customer journey mapping exercise, um, what you essentially get is a customer blueprint. It's a blueprint
Mm,
of how your customers shop, how they find you or competitors, and it's, I guess, visual as well. And you
mm,
can use that at any level of the business. It's not just for your website. It's not just for digital. It's in store. It's email. It's basically everything. And I think that's the beauty of sort of spending the time and the effort to do some of this UX work, some of the research and the workshops. It gives you or the business a lot more clarity, and it gives you a blueprint to build off. So look, the other things we do after empathy mapping, journey mapping is, again, where possible, we like to talk to customers, whether that's one-on-one interviews. So that, I guess
mm-hmm.
that's more qualitative, or it's more quantitative surveys. ideally we do both, and we do it sort of before the design and after the design to test things. But again, that just gives you the feedback. And again, it's all about the customer. So if you don't talk to the customer, or if you don't know what they want or don't want, like or dislike, you can't design the ideal journey or experience for them. I guess after that is when we then start to roll out the actual solution, whether that's a sitemap, wireframes, and then going to design. Look, one of the tips I've got for, maybe any of the retailers out there is, spend a little bit of time, in this sort of UX research sort of area, but also around the sitemap. So what we found that works really well for our clients is that looking at a sitemap both from an SEO perspective, but also from a customer perspective. And if you can sort of understand, I guess, the pros and cons of both, you will ideally have a site that's optimized for customers, but also optimized for Google/SEO. And that way you'll get more traffic, and ideally, more traffic meaning more conversions, more sales, etc.
Oh, totally agree. Thanks, Ryuji. I mean, I'm on your website at the moment. I can see, I remember doing all the Post-it notes, and sticking them all up, and it's fun to do it because you're working as a team. So you bring your team in and you sit down and you have some coffees and whatever, and you start to brainstorm. And it's almost like a cleanse, you sort of, because your brain gets so full of, well, mine does anyway, and I'm guilty of this. My brain gets so full of ideas, and some of them you just don't have the ability to execute on all of them. But unless you put them down on paper, unless you visualize those ideas, they stay in your head, and it becomes this big mess, and in your head of all these things you want to do, and you don't know how to prioritize. And this actually helps you prioritize. Like you say, you start working on the solution once you've got that idea of what the site's going to look like, what sitemap should look like. And to your point about sitemap, I mean, on my site, the Digital Discovery Group .group website, I'm using a standard platform, but I've changed my sitemap 3 times because I started with all of these ideas, and then I'm like, it's too complicated. And then I just went, created another sitemap and new pages, and they started to rank straight away. I made sure all the SEO was good content, good images, and so on. And then I thought, you know what? People are just ringing me because they want to switch from what they're currently doing. So I just put up a thing called Make the Switch. So now I'm finding more people are coming to me when they've got, domain names all over the place, and then they've got a website here and a website there, and it's doing pretty good business. They're not quite sure how to use their platform, but they're just packing orders at the moment. So I can come in and say, okay, and I can bring it all together for them. And I mean, I'm not a graphic designer, so I would reach out to someone like Rysen and say, hey guys, help put that brief together. Let's get something over to the customer, bring the customer in. So it's kind of like this idea of it's not, the customer is busy focusing on what they're good at, which is their business. You guys can then focus on what you're good at by then having all this information there. You can rely on, you take photos of it all. You've got it as a reference point. You document it really, really well. I mean, we got a fantastic document from you guys after we did this research, I remember. But in the end, it's all about the growth. Do you think in 5 years, Ryuji, retail is going to look like it does now with AI and everything? No. Yeah. It is 100% going to be very, very different. And we know with augmented reality, all of these technology firms are trying to get more and more time per day of user attention, and that's all their KPI to do. So eventually, once we've left the office, we're going to be on our devices. We're going to be talking to friends. We're not going to be shopping. So shopping has to come to us as customers. There will always be there a segment of shoppers out there that love the in-store experience and everything like that. But it just changes what in-store is meant to be for the customer. It becomes a discovery, really. It becomes, I go into a store to discover the tactile feel, touch and feel, the physical discovery, where the digital discovery happens online. And that's why I call it the Business Digital Discovery Group, because that's really what it's about. It's about digitally how you discover brands and businesses and ideas and concepts, everything, so. All right, cool. Move on to SEO. Obviously, we spoke about that, the wireframes design, and then the building and integration. Now, you guys do the building and integration as well, but obviously for bigger projects, you would sort of outsource that to another agency and so on. But
Yes.
best of breed situation.
Exactly. Yeah. What we found, like you mentioned earlier in the podcast, Nige, is that it's often good to separate the creative UX UI with the build, and ideally have specialists in both areas. Because I think, to your point, it's super rare to find one agency or one team that does awesome UX UI and build, because they're quite different. And sometimes, it might be you're designing a site based around a feature or a function that's led sort of technically, whereas ideally you want to design something that's led by the customer and their needs. And so there's often a bit of a clash internally, if you're trying to do both in the one agency. And that's why typically our projects, especially the bigger ones, we will have partners, whether it's people like, Lloyd at Fontes or a bunch of other awesome agencies that specialize more in the technical side once the UX and the UI has been, designed and sort of strategized.
100%. And this is one of the things, is you don't push boundaries when people are comfortable. Like if people are comfortable and it will just present, what they know technically or from a functional specification point of view, the platform can achieve, then no boundaries get pushed. So the only way you can get push boundaries is by creatively coming up with ideas that technically probably can't happen, but you find compromises and you land at a point where you've created something new. And a lot of people don't realize this is the symbiotic relationship between technology, functional specifications, and the design work. It's like, yes, there is that relationship because it's form and function. And that's one of the first things you understand is, a perfect example is Elon Musk with his Cybertruck, right? I've been a huge fan of the Cybertruck. I'm like, it's bloody ugly. It looks horrible. Yeah, it's kind of ugly, but it's kind of like cool ugly. It's kind of like, but as Elon Musk says, it's sort of like form versus function. Function versus form, right? Oh, no, other way around. Yeah, I'm confusing myself. It's got an exoskeleton. It's not a chassis on rail. It's designed with stainless 301 stainless steel, so it's bulletproof. It's all of these things that technically, if you had have asked a senior executive at Ford, he would say, "Are you freaking mad? Like, we're not creating that. Look at it. It's a shocker." That graphic designer would have been thrown out of the room, or the design team would have been kicked, never to come back. But yet Elon's like, "No, guys, show me something different. Do you want a truck that looks like a truck?" And now everybody, it's polarizing, but that's how you actually create something new. Now he's created something new, and John in the previous podcast spoke about reinventing, retail reinvention, and he spoke a lot about reinventing yourself as well as your business. And Elon Musk is very good at that. Now, I'm not a big Elon Musk fanboy, but I appreciate the things the ideas and that he brings to people. And, he says that one of his sayings that I really love is you focus on the problem and solving the problem, and then the tools become apparent. So you focus on, and I think back about our time together, we were focusing so much on the problem. We didn't have to worry about whether or not things could be done. It was up to you guys and the web developers to try and find the tools that would make what we wanted work. And we created something new. We had pop-ups and we had countdown clocks, and this was all before anybody was using it, especially for Big Brown Box. We created all of that.
Yeah, like Nige, if you remember, we worked on Big Brown Box with Acer to do, customized PCs, which back then was revolutionary. It was the first of its kind. And to your point, if we started with the technology, they would have said, no, too hard. Don't even go there. But we went the other way. We said, what would customers want? Oh, right. An awesome experience being able to, build their own PC. How do we create that? And then we, did that, and then took that, I guess, blueprint to the developers to go, we've got a challenge for you, mate. Try and make this work. And it happened.
It happened. It absolutely happened. And it was very successful. I mean, we had $9,000. I mean, back then, it wasn't that long. I say back then, but it wasn't really that long ago. But like we had sliders, and it was almost like the Dell experience today. Like Dell didn't even have that. They had the basic configurator with these really ugly looking, it was all written in ASP.NET sort of stuff. It was all ugly. And, we were using this open source platform, Magento. It would slide across and you could pick your RAM, you could pick your hard drive, your software. It would go to Acer. They'd put it all together and send it out to the customer. And then they put a whole marketing campaign behind it. It was fantastic. And no one had ever, and so I'm so glad you reminded me of that, because I remember working on that project and it actually was really, really successful. Everybody's got 1,000 reasons why you shouldn't do things, but I always say that think of what you want to do, then try and execute on the idea and the problem that you're trying to solve. Has anybody else done it before? Have they done a really good job at it? How could it be done better? All right, mate. Well, now we could talk all day. I'm absolutely loving chatting to you, mate. I mean, this is so good, and I'd love to have you back on the show. I think at some point in the future as well. And
anytime, Nigel. I'd love to be back.
Yeah. Thanks, mate. And I think that I'll see what sort of questions come in. Most people send me emails actually, and I get on chat. They'll ask questions and so on. But for the audience out there, if you have any questions for Ryuji, I'm happy to. For you, I'll put some show notes on the your details on the show notes. They can reach out to you via your website. Yep. Look, mate, I think we might leave the show there. Now, before I go, every one of my podcast guests gets some of my amazing merchandise.
Awesome.
Now you have a choice. But the only problem is I'm kind of out of stock with some of it. I'll show you these. So I have these new shirts that came in just recently, but I'm going to get some more. So these are the Digital Discovery t-shirts.
Oh, nice. I love it.
So this is 2XL. So it's absolutely gigantic. And the US sizes. So I'll get your size. And we have some new mouse mats. I changed the supplier because I sold out on the other ones.
Oh, wow.
So I highly recommend, actually, Vistaprint is actually really good for those out there in business that are looking. They're not the cheapest. I would say you can wait till things go on sale, which is normally what I do. But the quality is really good. So we've got these new mouse mats now. So these are, nice. I'll send you some of those out. Yes. Yep. You can give some of those to your team, and the mugs as well. So I've got a new supplier for the mugs. Again, it's Vistaprint. I'm looking to try and get some new colors, and I wanted to try and get orange for you because I know you love orange, and I'll never forget when you sent me a pair of orange Nikes Air Maxes. Yes. I've still got them.
Oh, excellent.
And when Holland played in the World Cup, I follow Holland. They're in the Soccer World Cup. Obviously, everything's orange. So
oh, nice.
Yeah, so I was wearing them everywhere, and my kids said to me, "Dad, you're not a teenager anymore." And I said, "Shut up," as you do. So I've got these new mugs now. So I'll just I'll show you these.
And look, while you're doing that, maybe if I could just speak to your your audience, the people listening.
Yeah.
Look, just want to say, Nigel, you are one of the gurus. Oh, that looks awesome. One of the real gurus in this industry, and you've helped multiple businesses go from, as an example, I think Bingley, when we started working with you, we're doing like 1 or 2 million to like 100+ million. Like,
that's right.
And that's because of you. It's not just like us or other agencies. You are the glue to all of that. And so I guess I just want to let people know that, look, you've done such an amazing, volume of work in our industry, and you've taken so many brands from being small to massive that, that I guess, you're just a guru and a nice guy. So they should definitely
thank you so much, Ryuji,
because you've done so much.
Oh, mate, look, I really, really appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, I'm not always out there and always at events, and I just don't get time. I've got 4 kids. I like to spend time with them. So every spare minute I get, I'd prefer to stay home or we go out. I'd rather be out with the family. But I'm going to try this year and get out a little bit more, try and get out and be with the industry a little bit more, go to a few more events and so on. This is why I'm doing the podcast right now, actually, because it's just a voice for people who I know who are fantastic, like yourselves, Ryuji and your team. Without you guys, we couldn't have done what we did. And also to the people I know that are just genuinely good guys, and they've got really good brains, essentially, and I just want to talk You're welcome to come back on anytime. The invitation is always open for you, mate. So thank you very much.
Awesome. I appreciate it. Thanks so much.
All right.
Much love to you.
Thanks, mate. Thank you very much, mate. Thanks.